The convoy of 3 black Range Rovers rolled into the church compound, and I watched through tinted windows as Chittera's jaw dropped to the marble floor. Let me tell you something about pride. It doesn't just wound you once. It stalks you through the years, waits for the perfect moment, then strikes when you've built your entire future on the foundation of your arrogance. And today, in this overpriced Lagos wedding venue dripping with imported flowers and false expectations, Chittera was about to learn that lesson in the most spectacular way possible. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here. You need to feel every humiliation, every tear, every moment I thought I wasn't enough. Because this story, it's not just about revenge. It's about something far more powerful. 3 years ago, I was nobody. Not in the way people usually say that, with false modesty and hidden privilege. I mean, I was actually nobody. Mara from Delta State. Orphan. Secretary at a struggling logistics firm in Surulere. Living in a self-contained apartment where the ceiling leaked during rainy season, and the generator was a luxury I couldn't afford. 25 years old with dreams bigger than my bank account and a beauty that people noticed but couldn't quite place. The kind that whispers rather than shouts. That's when Chittera found me. ShopRite. Ikeja City Mall. Saturday afternoon. I was buying provisions, calculating every naira in my head, putting back the imported pasta because the local one was 60 naira cheaper, when this tall, fair-skinned man in a designer polo shirt nearly knocked over my basket reaching for organic honey. He apologized. Our eyes met. And I saw something in his gaze that I'd never seen directed at me before. Desire. Not just physical attraction, though that was there, burning hot and immediate. But something else. The way someone looks at a beautiful thing they've decided must be theirs. Like I was a painting in a gallery he'd just decided to purchase. I'm Chittera, he said, his voice smooth, confident, carrying the weight of someone who'd never been told no. And you are the most beautiful woman I've seen in Lagos. And trust me, I've been looking. I should have heard the warning bells. Should have noticed how his compliment was really about him. About his standards, his judgment, his search. But I was 25 and tired and so desperately lonely that his attention felt like warm sunlight after years of cold rain. We exchanged numbers. He called that evening. By the end of the week, we were dating. Within a month, he'd made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Leave your job, he said over jollof rice at an upscale restaurant in Victoria Island, the kind where a single plate cost more than my monthly salary. You're working yourself to death for 70,000 naira a month. That's what I spend on fuel. Move in with me. Let me take care of you properly. You're too beautiful, too special to be struggling like this. I hesitated. My mother, God rest her soul, had warned me about men who wanted to own you disguised as men who wanted to help you. But Chittera's apartment in Lekki was a 3-bedroom miracle with constant electricity, DSTV, and a view of the water. His business, importing electronics from China, was thriving. And most importantly, he looked at me like I was precious. So I quit my job. So I moved in. So I made the biggest mistake of my life. The first few months were paradise. Chittera bought me clothes from boutiques I'd only window shopped at before. Took me to beach resorts in La Campagne Tropicana. Introduced me to the Lagos nightlife. Rooftop bars where bottles of champagne cost 200,000 naira and nobody blinked. He was generous, affectionate, and attentive. But slowly, like water seeping through cracks in a foundation, his true nature began to show. Why would you wear that to my friend's party? He asked one evening, his voice carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. It makes you look cheap. I bought you better things. Wear the blue dress. The Gucci one. I'm going to see my friend Blessing today, I mentioned one afternoon. The one who lives in a Jeej. His face twisted with barely concealed disgust. Why would you waste your time there? Those people, Mara, you're with me now. You need to upgrade your associations. I was thinking maybe I could take an online course. Digital marketing or... For what? He laughed, actually laughed at me. Baby, I provide everything you need. Why stress yourself? Just focus on looking beautiful and keeping the house nice. That's enough. Every decision I made, he questioned. Every choice, he overrode. Every dream I mentioned, he dismissed. And always, there was the reminder. Do you know how many girls would kill to be in your position? I'm doing you a favor. Don't be ungrateful. The thing about emotional abuse is that it doesn't announce itself. It creeps in wearing the mask of love, speaking in the language of care. By the time you recognize it, it's already wrapped around your throat. I became smaller, quieter. I stopped mentioning my friends. Stopped talking about the things I wanted to learn. I existed in his beautiful apartment like an expensive decoration, something to be displayed when impressive, hidden when inconvenient. But I wasn't completely broken. Not yet. Late at night, when Chidera was snoring beside me, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, feeling something hard and unbreakable forming in my chest. Not anger, not yet, but something more dangerous. Self-awareness. I started researching online business opportunities on my phone, deleting the browser history like a teenager hiding secrets. I found a platform that needed content writers for their blog. I applied. They accepted. I began working at night, after Chidera slept, earning small amounts at first. 10,000 naira here, 15,000 there. I opened a bank account he didn't know about. Every payment went there. Every naira I earned through my own intelligence, my own effort, my own worth. It all went into that secret account, growing slowly but surely. I was preparing for escape, even though I didn't know it yet. The end came on a Thursday evening in November. Chidera arrived home late, barely acknowledging me. He'd been distant for weeks, taking calls in the other room, spending weekends at business meetings. I'd felt the shift but had been too afraid to name it. We need to talk, he said, loosening his tie, not even looking at me. My heart dropped into my stomach. I knew that tone, that posture, that careful lack of eye contact. I've met someone else, he continued, his voice flat, businesslike. Chelsea. She's from Anambra like me. Her father is Chief Lawrence. You probably don't know who that is, but he's a big man in Abuja. Her family has connections, money, property. She's educated, refined. She works in an oil company. She's what I need at this stage of my life. The words hit me like physical blows. But what hurt most wasn't the rejection. It was the casual cruelty of his explanation. He was listing reasons why she was better, like he was comparing phone specifications. We had 3 years together, I whispered, tears already streaming down my face. 3 years. Chidera. Doesn't that mean anything? He shrugged. That shrug, that careless, dismissive movement of his shoulders, that's what finally broke me open. I'm sorry, he said, but his eyes were already looking past me. already seeing his future without me in it. You're a good person, Mara. But you don't meet my standards. You don't have what I need. It's time to move on. I begged. God help me, I begged him. I promised to improve, to be better, to meet whatever standards he demanded. I degraded myself in ways that still make me cringe when I remember. He stood there, unmoved, waiting for me to finish my humiliation. Pack your things, he said finally. You can stay tonight, but I need you gone by tomorrow. I packed that night. Through tears that blurred my vision, I stuffed my clothes, most of them gifts from him, into the old bag I'd brought when I moved in. I left behind the jewelry, the expensive shoes, the designer handbags. They suddenly felt like prison chains, bought and paid for. I called Blessing. She picked me up at midnight, asked no questions, just held me while I cried in her small Ajij apartment. The account I'd been building in secret had about 400,000 naira in it. 400,000 naira I'd earned myself, writing articles about technology, business trends, lifestyle tips. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And it was a beginning. Over the next year, I worked like I'd never worked before. I expanded my writing portfolio, took on more clients, built a reputation for quality work. The content platform I worked for was owned, I discovered, by a massive conglomerate. I had no idea whose it was. I just worked, earned, saved, and slowly, painfully, rebuilt myself. I moved into my own one-bedroom apartment in Suralaya. Nothing fancy, but the rent came from my own pocket. I bought a small laptop with my own money. I furnished the space with furniture I chose myself. For the first time in years, I belonged to myself. Then, 8 months after Chidera destroyed me, I received an email requesting I submit a monthly performance report directly to the CEO's office. The company was consolidating its digital platforms, and high-performing freelancers were being considered for permanent positions. I dressed in my best outfit, still humble but professional, and went to the corporate headquarters in Victoria Island. The building was massive, all glass and steel and quiet opulence. I was directed to the executive floor. And that's where I met him. Victor. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over Lagos, when I entered. Tall, dark-skinned, with glasses that somehow made him look both intellectual and impossibly handsome. He turned when I entered, and his smile was warm, genuine, completely different from Chidera's predatory charm. Mara, he asked, extending his hand. I've been reading your work. You're exceptionally talented. We talked for 2 hours. About writing, about business, about Lagos, about life. He asked about my background. I told him the truth, holding nothing back. Orphan. Former relationship that ended badly. Building myself from nothing. He didn't pity me. He respected me. My father started with nothing too, he said. Chief Lawrence. People see the billions now, but they forget he sold Accra on the streets of ABA as a teenager. He respects people who work hard, who don't make excuses. People like you. That was the beginning. Victor pursued me, not with the possessive intensity of Chidera, but with genuine interest and respect. He courted me properly, asked about my dreams, supported my ambitions, introduced me to his family not as a trophy but as an equal. Chief Lawrence, his father, was a force of nature. 65 years old, wealthy beyond measure, but with a humility that comes from remembering where you started. He approved of me immediately. This one has fire inside, he told Victor after our first meeting. She's been through something. I can see it in her eyes. But she didn't let it break her. She's a survivor. Those are the ones you build with. 6 months later, Victor and I had a court wedding. Small, intimate, just family and close friends. Nothing extravagant. Despite the family's wealth, they valued substance over show. We had twin boys a year later. My life became something I'd never imagined possible. Not just comfortable, but genuinely happy. Victor wasn't perfect, but he was kind. He was patient. He saw me as a partner, not a possession. And I never forgot the lesson Chidera taught me. Never, ever let anyone make you feel like you're only worthy because of what they provide. Which brings us back to today. The invitation arrived 3 weeks ago. Heavy cardstock, gold embossing, expensive printing. Mr. Chidera Okonkwo and Miss Chelsea Lawrence request the honor of your presence. My hands had trembled reading that surname. Lawrence. It couldn't be coincidence. Lagos is big, but the circle of extreme wealth is surprisingly small. I'd shown Victor the invitation. His face had darkened. Chelsea is my sister, he said quietly. My younger sister. I had no idea she was dating anyone seriously, much less planning a wedding. My father didn't mention it. We called Chief Lawrence immediately. He was in Abuja, preparing to fly down for the wedding he'd apparently only learned about 2 weeks prior. Chelsea had been secretive, he said, which wasn't like her. Who is this Chidera? Chief Lawrence had asked me directly. I told him everything. The 3-year relationship. The control. The way Chidera had made me quit my job, had isolated me, had systematically destroyed my self-worth. The way he'd discarded me when someone better came along. The silence on the phone had been deafening. And now he wants to marry my daughter, Chief Lawrence said, his voice deadly calm. My daughter, who he probably pursued because of our family's wealth. Who he probably sees as an upgrade, a business transaction. Sir, I don't want to ruin. You're not ruining anything, he cut me off. You're preventing a disaster. My daughter deserves better than a man who measures women like commodities. We're all coming to this wedding. And we're going to make sure the truth comes out. So here we are. The convoy doors opened. Chief Lawrence stepped out first, his presence commanding immediate attention. Then Victor, holding our twin boys. Then me. I dressed carefully. Not to outshine the bride. I'm not petty like that. But to remind Chidera of exactly what he'd thrown away. An emerald green dress that complemented my skin tone. Hair styled elegantly. The quiet confidence of a woman who'd been broken and rebuilt herself stronger. The church compound went silent. I could see Chidera standing at the altar in his tailored suit, his face cycling through emotions. Shock, disbelief, horror. His mother, Madame Ngozi, stood beside him, her expression frozen. Chelsea, the bride, stood in her white dress looking confused. We walked through the parted crowd. Every step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Chelsea saw me first. Father, she asked, her voice uncertain. What's going on? Who is this? I spoke before anyone else could. My name is Mara, I said, my voice clear and steady. And 3 years ago, I was in a relationship with your fiancé. A 3-year relationship that he ended when he met you. He told me I didn't meet his standards. That you were better, educated, refined, from the right family. He said you were what he needed. Chelsea turned to Chidera, her face pale. You told me you were single. You said you'd never had a serious relationship. You said. It wasn't serious, Chidera stammered, his smooth confidence completely shattered. It was just, Mara, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to ruin? I'm not trying to ruin anything, I interrupted. Your actions already did that. I'm just making sure your bride knows exactly who she's marrying. A man who sees relationships as transactions. Who measures women by their family connections and bank accounts. Who will discard her the moment someone richer or more connected comes along. Chief Lawrence stepped forward, his voice carrying across the silent church compound. Is this true, Chidera? You pursued my daughter because of who her family is. Sir, no, I love her. Don't insult my intelligence, Chief Lawrence said coldly. I've been a businessman for 40 years. I recognize a merger when I see one. You saw my daughter as an acquisition, didn't you? A way to access my businesses, my connections. Chidera's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Madame Ngozi, his mother, finally found her voice. Chief Lawrence, please, let's discuss this privately. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Chelsea said, her voice breaking. She turned to Chidera, tears streaming down her face. You lied to me. About everything. You made me think you loved me for me, but it was never about me, was it? It was about what I could give you. What my family could give you. Chelsea, baby, please. She slapped him. The sound echoed across the compound like a gunshot. We're done, she said. This wedding is cancelled. I will not marry a man who sees me as a business deal. She turned to her father. I'm sorry, Daddy. I should have told you about him earlier. I should have let you meet him properly. I was so stupid. Chief Lawrence wrapped his arm around his daughter. You weren't stupid. You were trusting. That's not a fault. But now you know better. He turned to face Chidera and his mother one last time. Consider this your lesson. In this life, character matters more than connections. Integrity matters more than wealth. And the way you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you, that reveals who you truly are. Chelsea walked away, supported by her father and brother. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring, shocked. I stood there, face to face with Chidera for the first time in 3 years. He fell to his knees. Actually fell to his knees. Mara, please, he begged, tears streaming down his face. Please tell them it's not true. Please fix this. I'm sorry for what I did. I was stupid. I didn't know what I had. Please. I looked down at him. This man who had once made me feel so small, so worthless, so grateful for his scraps of attention. I felt nothing but pity. Chidera, I said softly, you didn't just lose Chelsea today. You lost her 3 years ago, when you proved that your pride and your greed mattered more than human connection. You lost her the moment you made me believe I wasn't enough. Because a man who treats one woman like garbage will eventually treat them all that way. I turned to walk away. But you came back successful, he shouted after me. You're with them now. You're rich. You won. I stopped. You still don't understand, I said, looking back at him. This was never about winning. It was never about being rich or being with the right family. It's about being with someone who saw me when I had nothing and valued me anyway. Victor didn't fall in love with Chief Lawrence's employee. He fell in love with Mara from Delta State, the orphan with 400,000 naira in her account and dreams in her heart. That's the difference between you and him. That's the difference between a man and a boy playing at being one. I walked back to the convoy, where Victor waited with our sons. "Ready to go home?" he asked, kissing my forehead. "More than ready." As we drove away, I looked back one last time. Chidera was still on his knees. Madame Gozi stood beside him, her face a mask of shame and fury. The wedding guests were leaving, some casting pitying glances, others barely concealing their satisfaction at seeing the proud humbled. And I felt free. Not because Chidera had been publicly humiliated, though I won't lie, there was a certain poetic justice in it, but because I realized that his rejection 3 years ago had been the greatest gift he could have given me. It forced me to discover my own strength, to build my own worth, to understand that my value didn't come from someone else's approval. That night, after putting our sons to bed, Victor and I sat on the balcony of our home overlooking the Lagos Lagoon. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Going today?" Confronting him. I thought about it carefully. "No," I said finally. Chelsea deserved to know the truth. And maybe Chidera needed to understand that pride and arrogance eventually come with a price. That you can't treat people like commodities and expect no consequences. "My sister called," Victor said. "She's hurt, but she's grateful. She said to thank you for saving her from making a terrible mistake." I smiled. "Tell her she would have figured it out eventually. Strong women always do. Sometimes we just need a reminder that we're strong." 3 months later, I received a message from Chelsea. She'd gone back to work, focused on her career, started seeing a therapist to work through the betrayal. She was healing. As for Chidera, I heard through the Lagos grapevine that his business had struggled after the failed wedding. Turns out Chief Lawrence had been planning to invest heavily in Chidera's import business as a wedding gift. When that fell through, so did Chidera's expansion plans. He'd banked his entire future on a transaction that never materialized. His mother's political ambitions took a hit too. The story of the cancelled wedding spread through Anambra State social circles. She'd been positioning herself for a Senate run, but the scandal damaged her reputation among the very elite she'd been courting. Pride really does come before a fall. But this story isn't really about Chidera's downfall. It's about something more important. It's about the woman who was told she wasn't enough and chose to believe differently. It's about the quiet strength that builds in the dark moments when you're alone and broken and decide to put yourself back together anyway. It's about understanding that your worth isn't determined by who wants you, but by who you are when no one's watching. Because here's the truth they don't tell you. Sometimes the most valuable thing someone can do for you is leave. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes losing everything forces you to discover that you are always enough. You just needed to believe it yourself. Chidera thought he was trading up when he left me for Chelsea. He thought he was making a strategic decision, choosing the better option. What he didn't understand is that you can't value what you don't recognize. He saw my poverty but not my potential. My circumstances but not my character. My current situation but not my capacity for growth. He chose wealth over worth. Connections over character. Status over substance. And in doing so, he revealed that his standards were never about quality at all. They were about quantity, of money, of influence, of bragging rights. Meanwhile, Victor saw something different. He saw intelligence, resilience, dignity. He saw a woman who'd been knocked down and gotten back up. He saw partner potential, not trophy potential. That's the difference. Now, when I look at my sons sleeping in their beds, when I work on projects that challenge and fulfill me, when I sit across from my husband and see genuine respect in his eyes, I thank God for that Thursday evening when Chidera told me I wasn't enough. Because he was right, in a way. I wasn't enough for him. I was too much. Too strong. Too resilient. Too unwilling to remain small forever. Too destined for better things than being some prideful man's well-kept accessory. So to every woman who's ever been told she doesn't meet someone's standards, who's ever been made to feel grateful for mistreatment disguised as love, who's ever been discarded by someone who couldn't see her value, you are enough. Not because you found someone richer. Not because you won in some cosmic revenge plot. But because your worth was always there, constant and unshakable, waiting for you to recognize it. And when you do, when you truly understand that you don't need someone else's approval to validate your existence, that's when you become unstoppable. That's when pride meets its match. Not through humiliation or revenge, but through the quiet, unshakable power of knowing who you are and refusing to accept less than you deserve. That's the real karma. That's the real consequence of pride, not just the public humiliation at a failed wedding, but the private realization of what you lost when you measured human beings by currency and connection instead of character and heart. And that's the real power of self-worth, not proving someone wrong, but becoming so secure in who you are that their opinion stops mattering entirely. Lagos still tells the story of the wedding that never happened. How Chidera Okonkwo tried to marry Chief Lawrence's daughter and got exposed by his ex-girlfriend who turned out to be the billionaire's daughter-in-law. But they get the story wrong. This was never about me destroying Chidera. This was about me discovering myself. The rest was just karma doing what karma does, making sure pride eventually pays the bill it's been accumulating. And trust me, that bill always comes due. Always. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and turn on the notification button for more.